Hezbollah takes responsibility for attacks on Israeli military posts along Lebanon border. Israeli forces entered Gaza for localized raids. U.S. Qatar have quiet agreement to block Iran from accessing $6 billion in funds amid Hamas terror attacks. The Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for attacks on Israeli military posts along the border with Lebanon on Friday. The Islamist group said in a statement they targeted the military posts with small arms fire. The Israeli military responded with tank and artillery fire toward the source of the attacks, Israeli Defense Forces said. A group of journalists covering clashes on the border was struck by an Israeli shell that killed one and left 6 others injured, the Associated Press reported. Qatari media outlet Al-Jazeera TV said 2 of its employees, Elie Brakhya and reporter Carmen Joukhadar, were wounded. Others wounded and killed were not yet identified by their respective outlets. The Lebanon-Israel border has been witnessing sporadic acts of violence since Saturday's attack by the terrorist Palestinian group Hamas on southern Israel. Journalists from around the world have been coming to Lebanon out of concern that war might break out between Hezbollah and Israel. Israeli forces entered Gaza for localized raids. IDF tells Fox News. The IDF tells Fox News Trey Yingst that Israeli forces entered the Gaza Strip Friday, both infantry forces and tanks, to conduct localized raids. The Israeli military said the raids were an effort to eliminate militants along the border and to gather information about those held hostage inside the Gaza Strip. This was not the highly anticipated full-scale invasion Israel has been preparing, but it marks the first time Israeli forces entered Gaza on the ground since the start of the war on Saturday. More than 1,300 Israelis were killed and thousands more wounded when Hamas launched a surprise terror attack on the Jewish state Saturday. As many as 150 people are believed to have been taken captive by terrorists and held in Gaza, according to Israeli authorities. Israel has called up some 360,000 military reservists to respond to the Hamas-led terror campaign. Those forces have gathered on Israel's border with Gaza ahead of a possible full-scale invasion to reclaim the hostages and eliminate Hamas terrorists. Israel has warned the 1.1 million people living in the north of Gaza to evacuate the area within 24 hours as a humanitarian step in order to minimize civilian casualties, ahead of the military's response to Hamas terrorist attacks. U.S. Qatar have quiet agreement to block Iran from accessing $6 billion in funds amid Hamas terror attacks. The U.S. has a quiet agreement with Qatar to block Iran from accessing the $6 billion in humanitarian aid amid Hamas terror attacks on Israel, sources familiar told Fox News. Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo met with House Democrats on Thursday. Sources familiar with the meeting told Fox News that Adeyemo told lawmakers that the U.S. has a quiet agreement with Qatar not to move any of the $6 billion in unfrozen money to Iran for an indefinite period. A source present in the room told Fox News Digital that Adeyemo told congressional Democrats in that meeting that the U.S. has reached quiet understanding with Qatar not to move the $6 billion in funding. A senior House aide told Fox News that Congress has not received an official notification from the State Department or the Biden administration freezing the funding. The aide said it was not mentioned in the briefing on the matter earlier Thursday. In September, the Biden administration made a deal with Iran to swap prisoners and release $6 billion in frozen Iranian funds. As part of the deal, Iran released 5 American citizens detained in Iran and the U.S. released 5 Iranian citizens being held in the U.S. The deal also created a blanket waiver to transfer $6 billion in frozen Iranian funds from South Korea to Qatar without fear of violating U.S. sanctions. Administration officials say the funds can only be used for humanitarian needs like food and medicine. The unfreezing of the money took place nearly a month before Hamas terrorists launched a massive, deadly attack on Israel over the weekend.